stop before you pick up that paintbrush. You're about to make a mistake that's going to cost you time, money, and you'll be right back here doing it all over again in 2 years. Here's the truth nobody tells you. Paint doesn't protect old wood. It traps moisture underneath. It peels, it cracks, and slowly the wood underneath keeps rotting anyway. You're just hiding the problem, not fixing it. But there's a powder. It costs almost nothing. You can find it at any hardware store, and it actually bonds with the wood fibers at a molecular level. It repels water, stops rot in its tracks, and some people haven't touched their fence, deck, or furniture since applying it years ago. And the last tip I'm going to share with you today, almost nobody knows this one, but it works instantly and the results will genuinely shock you. Also, before we get into this, if you've been dealing with mystery stains, weird odors, or surfaces that just won't come clean no matter what you try, there's something most people completely skip over. We broke it down piece by piece in our last video, 17 shaving cream cleaning hacks that will blow your mind, and it solves a huge part of the problem that almost everyone ignores. It's worth going back and watching that one if you haven't yet. Now, let's talk about this powder and why it works better than anything else on the market. The powder is called copper sulfate, and it changes everything. Most people have never heard of it for wood. They associate it with pools or maybe agriculture, but old school woodworkers have known for decades that copper sulfate is one of the most powerful wood preservatives that exists. It kills fungus, it kills mold, it kills the bacteria that causes rot, and it soaks deep into the grain, not just sitting on top like paint or varnish does. Here's the first thing most people do wrong. They see old wood that's starting to gray and soften, and they immediately want to cover it up. They grab paint, stain, or sealant. But if there's any moisture or early rot already in that wood, you're sealing it in. You're creating a perfect, dark, damp environment for the damage to keep spreading, just hidden from view. The right move is to treat the wood first. Let the preservative do its job. Then, if you want, you can finish it however you'd like on top. Here's how to use copper sulfate on wood, step by step. First, grab your copper sulfate powder. You want the basic agricultural or technical grade, not the fancy pre-mixed stuff. A small bag costs just a few dollars and treats a massive amount of surface area. You're going to dissolve it in water. The ratio is roughly 1 tablespoon per quart of warm water, but you can go a little stronger for heavily weathered or already damaged wood. Stir it until it fully dissolves. The solution turns this beautiful blue-green color. That's how you know it's active and ready. Now here's where most people mess up. They try to apply it to dry, dirty wood and wonder why it doesn't absorb properly. Clean the wood first. Just a stiff brush and some water. Knock off the loose debris, any peeling material, dirt, anything sitting on the surface. You don't need a pressure washer. You just need the surface to be clean and slightly damp. Damp wood actually absorbs the solution better than bone-dry wood. Then apply your copper sulfate solution with a cheap paintbrush, a rag, or even a garden sprayer. You're not brushing it on like paint, you're soaking it in. Work it into the grain. Do 2 coats if the wood is really thirsty. You'll notice it pulling the liquid right in. Let it dry completely. Give it 24 hours minimum. In that time, the copper ions are binding to the wood fibers and creating an environment that fungus, mold, mildew, and rot-causing bacteria simply cannot survive in. But wait until you see what happens when you combine this with the next method we're about to cover. It takes the protection to a completely different level. Tip number 4, and this one surprises almost everyone. Borate powder, specifically disodium octatemerate tetrahydrate. And yes, that sounds complicated, but you probably know this product as Timbor or Boracare. It's sold at home improvement stores and online, and it's what professional pest control companies use on wood framing and new construction. Here's why this matters. Copper sulfate is incredible against rot and fungal decay, but borates go after insects. Termites, carpenter ants, wood-boring beetles, they cannot survive in borate-treated wood. They ingest it when they chew, and it disrupts their gut bacteria in a way that's completely lethal to them, but harmless to humans and pets. The application is almost identical to copper sulfate. Dissolve it in hot water. Borates need hot water to dissolve properly, that's an important detail, and apply it generously to bare wood or cleaned wood. And here's the powerful move most people don't know. You can mix copper sulfate and borates in the same solution. Apply them together in one treatment. You're now hitting rot, mold, fungus and insects simultaneously. One application, one drying period, years of protection. This is where it changes everything. Tip number 4, the wood that most people forget to treat. End grain. The cut ends of boards, fence posts, deck boards, wherever the wood was sawed through. End grain absorbs moisture exponentially faster than the face or edge grain. It's basically drinking from a straw every time it rains. And that's almost always where rot starts first. Most people slap treatment on the flat, visible surfaces and completely ignore the ends. Then they wonder why their fence post is rotting from the bottom up or why their deck boards are cracking from the ends inward. When you're applying your copper sulfate or borate solution, spend extra time saturating the end grain. Apply 3, 4, even 5 coats. Let each one soak in before adding the next. Seal those ends completely. That single habit will double the lifespan of almost any outdoor wood structure. Tip number 7 is where things get really interesting. Stick with me. Tip number 5, old wood that's already soft and punky. Here's something most people give up on. Wood that's already started to soften, that has that spongy feel when you press on it. Wood that's maybe turning gray or showing dark staining from moisture. A lot of people just rip it out and replace it. And sometimes that's necessary, but a lot of times that wood can be saved and hardened back up. There's a product called wood hardener. It's a thin liquid consolidant that soaks into degraded wood fibers and essentially re-glues them together from the inside. Minowax makes one. There are other brands. You can find it at any hardware store for under $20. Apply it to the soft spots. It soaks in, and as it cures, it dramatically stiffens the wood fibers. Once it's dry, the wood is solid enough to fill, sand, and refinish. Follow up with your copper sulfate treatment over the top, and you've essentially rescued wood that looked like it was done. Almost nobody does this part. They either replace everything, or they just paint over soft wood and call it done. Don't be that person. Tip number 6, the finish that actually belongs on top of treated wood. So, you've treated your wood. You've let everything cure properly. Now what? If you want to add a finish, use a penetrating oil, something like linseed oil, tung oil, or a commercial Danish oil. These don't form a film on top of the wood the way paint and varnish do. They soak in and become part of the wood itself. That means there's no surface layer to crack, peel, or trap moisture underneath. The wood flexes naturally as it expands and contracts with temperature and humidity changes, and the oil moves with it. Raw linseed oil is the cheapest option. You can get it for just a few dollars at any hardware store. Boiled linseed oil dries faster and is more practical for most projects. Tung oil is more water resistant and gives a slightly harder finish. Apply thin coats. Let each coat soak in fully before adding the next. Wipe off any excess that sits on the surface. Pooled oil will turn sticky and tacky and take forever to dry. The result is wood that looks rich, fed, and protected. Not painted, not plastic looking, just genuinely beautiful. And here's where things get crazy. Salt treatment. This sounds too simple and too cheap to be real, but in maritime cultures around the world, wood exposed to salt water has been known to last for extraordinarily long periods. The salt creates an environment that's hostile to the biological organisms that cause decay. Now, this isn't a substitute for copper sulfate or borates on structural wood, but for decorative pieces, garden furniture, or decorative wood features, a strong salt brine applied periodically can extend the life and slow graying and weathering significantly. Mix about a cup of salt per quart of hot water. Brush it on, let it dry completely. The salt crystals that form inside the wood fibers act as a mild preservative and help regulate moisture absorption. It won't last as long as copper sulfate, but it costs almost nothing, it's completely non-toxic, and for lighter applications, it's surprisingly effective. But here's the mistake most people make with all of these treatments. Tip number 8, timing your treatment wrong. Here's the thing about wood preservation that nobody talks about. Temperature and humidity at the time of application matter enormously. If it's too cold, below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, the solution won't penetrate properly. The wood fibers are constricted and the liquid just sits on the surface and dries without soaking in deep. You end up with surface treatment only, and the first time moisture gets in from the edges, you lose that protection. If it's too humid, if rain is coming in the next 24 to 48 hours, the dilution effect means the treatment doesn't concentrate properly in the wood and the binding process gets disrupted. The ideal conditions are 60 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, low humidity, and a dry forecast for at least 48 hours. Do your wood treatment in late spring or early fall in most parts of the country, and you'll have ideal conditions almost every time. Apply in the morning so the wood has the whole day to absorb and start drying before temperatures drop overnight. This is where it changes everything because people follow all the right steps and then apply in the wrong conditions and wonder why their results aren't matching what they expected. Tip number 9, the pressure treatment trick you can do at home. Commercial pressure-treated lumber gets its preservative forced deep into the wood fibers under extreme pressure in a factory. You can't exactly replicate that at home, but you can get surprisingly close with a simple method called soak treatment. Take your wood, fence boards, smaller planks, stakes, anything that'll fit, and submerge them in your copper sulfate or borate solution. Use a plastic tub, a garbage can lined with a bag, even a long PVC pipe capped at one end. Wake the wood down so it stays submerged. Leave it for 24 to 72 hours. The extended soak dramatically increases how deep the solution penetrates compared to a surface brush application. For fence posts or any wood going into the ground, this makes a massive difference. Ground contact is the harshest environment wood can be in. Constant moisture, soil organisms, and freeze-thaw cycles working on it constantly. Soak-treated posts will outlast surface-treated posts by years. This one tip alone can save you the cost and labor of replacing fence posts every few years. Tip number 10, the surface prep secret nobody talks about. Oxalic acid. You may have seen wood brightener products at the hardware store and wondered what they actually do. Most of them are oxalic acid based, and what oxalic acid does is neutralize the tannin oxidation and iron staining that causes weathered wood to turn gray and black. Before you treat old wood with any preservative, hit it with an oxalic acid solution first. Mix it according to package directions, apply it to the wood, let it sit for about 15 to 20 minutes, then rinse thoroughly. The wood will lighten noticeably. You're essentially resetting the surface back toward the original wood color. Now your copper sulfate treatment is going into clean, fresh-looking wood fibers rather than fighting through years of surface contamination. The penetration is better, the result looks dramatically better. This step takes maybe 30 extra minutes and makes everything else you do twice as effective. Tip number 11, the annual maintenance that takes 10 minutes. Here's the thing about treated wood. The treatment doesn't last forever, but maintaining it is incredibly easy once you've done the initial work right. Once a year, or once every 2 years for wood in less harsh conditions, give your treated surfaces a light inspection. Look for any areas where the finish looks dry, where water's no longer beating up on the surface, or where any soft spots are developing. For oil-finished wood, a single thin coat of fresh oil is all it takes to restore full protection. Wipe it on, let it soak in, wipe off the excess. For the underlying copper sulfate or borate treatment, you only need to retreat every 3 to 5 years depending on exposure. This isn't like repainting a house, it's minimal maintenance with maximum results. The people who do this annual check spend about 10 minutes a year on maintenance. The people who don't end up replacing entire fences and decks every decade. Tip number 12, the one situation where you actually should paint or stain. Okay, I said stop painting old wood, and I stand by that for preservation purposes. But here's where a stain does make sense. Solid colored deck stains, not paints, that are specifically formulated for horizontal surfaces can provide UV protection that penetrating oils don't offer as well. If your deck or outdoor furniture gets brutal direct sun exposure for most of the day, UV degradation is actually a bigger threat than moisture in that specific situation. The key is to use a stain, not paint. Stains penetrate, film don't. And always treat with your copper sulfate or borate first. Let it cure completely, then apply your stain over the top as a UV barrier and aesthetic finish, not as your primary protection strategy. Treat first, finish second. Never the other way around. Let's recap everything you just learned because this is genuinely powerful. Copper sulfate powder dissolved in water penetrates wood and kills rot, mold, and fungal decay at the source. Borate powder does the same thing for insects. Mix them together and you've got one application that handles both threats simultaneously. Treat end grain obsessively because that's where moisture always enters first. Rescue soft damaged wood with wood hardener before treating. Use penetrating oil over the top instead of paint or varnish. Applying the right temperature and humidity conditions or your results suffer. Soak smaller pieces for dramatically deeper penetration. Brighten old gray wood with oxalic acid before treating for better results and the cleaner look. Maintain annually in 10 minutes and your wood lasts decades. And use stain over your treated wood if UV is your main threat. Never paint. Now, you thought this was useful. Here's something most people don't realize. The reason surfaces in your home never seem to stay clean, the reason grease and buildup comes back so fast, the reason expensive products seem to stop working after a while, it's actually being caused by something completely different than what you think. And once you see it, you can fix it in minutes with something that costs almost nothing. That's exactly what we're breaking down in our next video. 23 Dawn dish soap hacks that clean your entire home better than expensive products. It's going to completely change how you think about cleaning.